Growing up, the Star Wars original trilogy was the best thing I had ever seen. Epic space battles, epic sword battles, cool explosions, and a unique storytelling style where the villains are portrayed as the heroes, and we actually root for the villains. Because if you actually pay attention, the Empire was the good guys all along. The first signs we have of the Empire being the good guys is the opening text of the film. So while this sounds ironic, the Empire is called evil. However, there is absolutely zero justification in this text to validate such a strong word. The exact same scroll describes this as a time of civil war, and like all wars, good and evil is a matter of perspective. There are clues in this very text that show that we shouldn't believe it, such as how the creatively named rebellion is called the Rebels. So not only do we learn that the Rebels lack creativity in picking a name, but also that their actual name is the Rebels. And as such, the Rebels is a proper noun and should be capitalized. So the other phrases, rebel spaceships and rebel spies, should be capitalized, but they aren't. Also, by having the Death Star written in all capital letters, which is something that is never justified in good grammar, it becomes clear that this text is nothing more than childish gibberish that should not be taken seriously. So remember, even in times of war, there is never a bad time to use good grammar. After the opening text, we see Vader's Star Destroyer firing upon and eventually capturing Leia's Corellian Corvette. We aren't aware of it at the time, but the Empire just became the victim of theft. Theft, might I add, regarding information of a weapon of mass destruction. It is quite baffling to consider the Empire's reclaiming of its own stolen property and stolen information as some sort of evil act. Later on, General Taggy refers to the possibility of the rebels using the stolen data to find a weakness in the Death Star.
If the rebels have obtained a complete technical readout of this station, it is possible, however unlikely, that they might find a weakness and exploit it.
So the Empire is wholly justified in making sure its technology doesn't fall into the hands of its enemies. But while on the subject of the taking of Leia's ship, it is worth noting that when the stormtroopers boarded the ship, they were clearly firing warning shots when initially boarding, and it was the violent and hyper-aggressive rebels that fired the first fatal shot. The Empire possessing a weapon of mass destruction is not an indication whatsoever of it being an evil entity. In fact, when viewed through the proper context, weapons of mass destruction are actually weapons of peace. If we use World War II as an example, had the Allies invaded Japan, it is widely assumed that it would have resulted in up to 4 million American casualties and 10 million Japanese fatalities. So while the atomic bombings of Nagasaki and Hiroshima caused immeasurable pain, suffering, and loss of life to the 250,000 people affected by the bombs, it inevitably prevented a much larger group of people from suffering similar fates. Weapons of mass destruction also have an effect of lasting peace. Since the invention of nuclear weapons, no nuclear-armed nations have engaged in prolonged combat with each other out of fear of mutually assured destruction. And while war is still present on Earth, the amount of armed conflicts has actually dropped to near record lows, with the rate of deaths from war decreasing from 20 people per 100,000 in 1945 to 0.3 people per 100,000 in 2011. Now you might be saying that none of this justifies the Empire destroying Alderaan, but then again, context is key. The Empire is a galactic government that obviously guards and protects trillions of people in the galaxy. This same Empire must make what can be considered as rash choices to protect its trillions of citizens from falling victim to weapons of mass destruction. Additionally, the people of Alderaan are just that. They are people. They have decided to support and uphold a monarchy that opposes the peace-seeking galactic empire. So by allowing their planetary government to engage in hostile conduct with the Empire, they are not only allowing but inviting the Empire to retaliate against them. Much like Nagasaki and Hiroshima, this use of a weapon of mass destruction was unjustifiably harsh to those who were affected, but in the long run it would convince other worlds to maintain loyalty, avoid similar loss of life, and create peace and safety for immeasurably more people. When talking specifically about the Empire, it is quite easy to see that this inherently peaceful government is not centered around war and conquest. War has not been a major motivating factor in its advancement. In fact, the Empire is incredibly lacking when it comes to war readiness. The peace-loving galactic empire is so dedicated to peace and inherently unprepared to engage in war that the rise of the violent rebel alliance blindsides the Empire, since TIE fighters are not equipped with shields and the bridge of the Star Destroyers are blatantly obvious targets. An empire centered around war and conquest would have more effective ways of protecting its soldiers and pilots. The peaceful Galactic Empire is so ill-equipped for war that the second Death Star, much like the first, isn't built with an onboard shield generator, so it has to resort to building a shield generator on the forest moon of Endor to protect the Death Star from wantonly aggressive behavior by the rebels. On top of that, the Empire is such a beacon of peace that it doesn't have its own resources in place to find the war criminal Han Solo, so it must rely on private contractors to find him.
There will be a substantial reward for the one who finds the Millennium Falcon. You are free to use any methods necessary, but I want them alive. No disintegrations.
To many, it is a running joke that stormtroopers are so bad at shooting that the safest place to be in battle is in front of a stormtrooper's rifle. And this is true for obvious reasons. It is outrageous to think that the military of a maniacal interstellar military would be so bad at hitting targets. But it does make very logical sense that the infantry of a merciful government would avoid casualties whenever possible. The supposedly level-minded rebels, on the other hand, show no indication of regret or remorse in blowing up not one, but two gigantic space stations with millions of people on board. The Imperial troops and pilots, on the other hand, seem to go out of their way to avoid causing catastrophic harm to their opponents by consistently and persistently firing warning shots and very rarely causing any casualties. Now let's shift gears to the rebels. They are supposedly good, but it is never really made clear as to why they are the good guys. The rebels have no clear goal except the downfall of the Empire. This sounds like a great idea in theory, except there is no clear plan to fill the power vacuum left by having the government of the entire galaxy instantly disappear. The rebels are so hell-bent on destruction of the Empire that they let Luke Skywalker pilot an X-Wing on his first day at the Yavin 4 Fortress. It isn't even until before they are about to take off that Red Leader even ventures to ask if he is qualified.
You sure you can handle this shit, sir?
And all the assurance he needs is a few words from Luke's friend Biggs.
Sir, Luke is the best bush pilot in the Outer Rim territories.
The only organization I know that will so easily put a religious fanatic behind a dangerous weapon to inflict carnage is ISIS. Plus, the rebels are so unorganized that by the time they are attacking the second Death Star, Han Solo, a smuggler, who was totally unaffiliated during the assault on the first Death Star, has already become a general.
General Solo, is your strike team assembled?
A man that uses a measurement of distance to describe doing something in an amount of time, which yes, does not make sense, is a general.
It's a ship that made the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs.
He is flanked in his leadership position by a man that sold him out to the Empire.
Lord Vader, we only use this facility for carbon freezing. You put him in there, it might kill him.
And a brother and sister who engage in stomach-churning displays of affection. While it can be argued that Luke and Leia were unaware of their shared family lineage, it is also worth noting that evolution has some safeguards in place to minimize the incidence of incest, which include being naturally sexually repulsed to close relatives.
Pay it no mind.
Who is she? She's beautiful.
Who is she? She's beautiful. Who is she? She's beautiful. Beautiful. Beautiful.
So the rebels, the supposed good guys, are led by a traitor, a smuggler, and two siblings that have DNA so messed up that they are sexually attracted to each other. When factoring in the Jedis, a secretive religious cult that consider themselves to be the peacekeepers of the galaxy, the only members of this club of fanatics seen during the entire trilogy is Obi-Wan, Yoda, and a very impressionable young Luke Skywalker. When looking at Obi-Wan specifically, this is a man that willingly chooses to live in a cave. Not much else needs to be said to invalidate him as a rational, level-headed person. No one has ever said, that man who lives alone in a cave, he is obviously a man of upstanding character. Beyond living in a cave, Obi-Wan is incredibly reckless. He makes very unsavory remarks about Mos Eisley and its inhabitants.
Mos Eisley Spaceport. You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
But Obi-Wan has no problem trusting a smuggler he meets there. This pilot, in true criminal nature, provides no proof or credentials about having the fastest ship in the galaxy.
Han Solo. I'm captain of the Millennium Falcon. Chewie here tells me you're looking for passage to the Alderaan system.
Yes, indeed. If it's a fast ship.
Fast ship. You've never heard of the Millennium Falcon?
Should I have?
It's a ship that made the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs.
And he brags about having outrun Imperial ships in previous encounters.
I've outrun Imperial starships. Not the local bulk cruisers, mind you. I'm talking about the big Carillion ships now.
Obi-Wan's recklessness is on full display during his lightsaber battle with Vader. Vader warns Obi-Wan that he is stronger than him.
Now I am the master.
Instead of heeding this warning, Obi-Wan decides to make ominous threats.
You can't win, Darth. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
For being the supposed beacon of peace that Obi-Wan should be as a Jedi, he consistently makes damaging strikes at Vader, with Vader only engaging in defensive posture. The only major offensive strike that Vader attempts to make towards Obi-Wan is towards his lightsaber. But Obi-Wan, in true cowardly fashion, uses witchcraft and dissolves into thin air, which clearly baffles Vader. This, of course, happens in front of multiple stormtroopers who at any moment could have shot at Obi-Wan to save their leader, but they are so opposed to killing that they do nothing more than just look on. While still on the topic of the Jedi, Obi-Wan has been dead for a while by the time Luke leaves Dagobah to go to the Cloud City. And as a perfect example of being a jerk, Yoda finally tells Obi-Wan, the dead guy, the type of dead guy that is referenced in the saying, only dead men can keep secrets, that there is another potential Jedi.
There is another.
It just seems like bad planning by a religious leader who is down to only one living follower to keep such information secret for such a long time. The rebels are also clearly built for war and conquest. These power-hungry, warmongering rebels have invested in a technologically powerful array of ships to combat the larger, peace-loving Empire. The Empire only has a small variety of fighters that all seem to be of a single purpose, and they are unshielded. The rebels, on the other hand, have A-Wings, B-Wings, X-Wings, and Y-Wings. The X-Wings and B-Wings are so advanced that they can transform, which in the vacuum of space is quite irrelevant, but engaging in a rebellion against a peaceful empire is also proof that there is a lack of common sense in the organization. The rebel fighters also seem to be multi-purpose, with the ability to shoot blasters and torpedoes and have droid-assisted autopilot. Shifting gears to Darth Vader, it is sad that he is so horribly misunderstood and considered by many to be a prime example of evil. However, it just seems like it is more editing trickery than demonic evil. Granted, the guy doesn't come across as being a great dinner guest.
We would be honored if you would join us.
But he is a man in a tough position. He is a central figure of the government with the very stressful job of quelling an evil rebellion. The man is not in a position to be all rainbows and butterflies all the time. But the greatest leaders in the history of the world have rarely been on the front lines of battle with their men the same way that Vader is in the original trilogy. The man may be stern and blunt, but he is a man with honor that stands beside his men in battle. You may be saying nothing can be said to justify Vader going to the dark side of the Force, except there really isn't anything wrong with the dark side. The only two people we see from the dark side in the trilogy are Vader and Emperor Palpatine. These two men also happen to be the two most powerful men in the Galactic Empire that has unified most of the galaxy in peace. This same empire employs countless people. If being a job creator that keeps people safe and puts dinner on the tables of countless families across the galaxy is the dark side, then the dark side doesn't sound that bad at all. On the other hand, the light side of the Force, the Jedi's, does not look all that appealing. The fashion is downright deplorable. The two established Jedi's, Obi-Wan and Yoda, live in a cave and a bog respectively, in what happens to be a state of utter poverty. The Jedi's also clearly shirk the rule of law.
You don't need to see his identification.
We don't need to see his identification.
These aren't the droids you're looking for.
These aren't the droids we're looking for.
He can go about his business.
You can go about your business.
Move along.
Move along. Move along.
And there is no indication that they have created any jobs anywhere for anyone in the entire galaxy. As the video concludes, I will leave you with a final piece of evidence of the Empire being the true heroes. On Tatooine, an Outer Rim planet that is not under the dominion of the Empire, we can clearly see a stormtrooper directing traffic. If a stormtrooper creating a safe driving experience is considered evil, then I just don't know what is considered right.